Hi, good afternoon. I've never done a book reading before. This is my first. While there have been close to 6 book launches across the country, somehow the burden of book reading, I always left it to others. Let others read, and I will just give my very wise thoughts after that. So this is the first book reading that I'm doing in my entire life. So please bear with me if it is not a great book reading thing. Just a little context. I don't think most of y'all really know me or where I come from. I'm an activist, and I've been fighting human trafficking for the last 30 years, very specifically sex trafficking. I'm in the business of rescuing women and children who are in sex slavery. Rescued around 29,200 girls out of prostitution. I've set up the largest rehabilitation home in the world. So I didn't even have a book of mine in my hand. I borrowed it with somebody who had got it to get myself signed. So that is why I was running around from this way. I was just wondering what would make sense for a book reading. And I thought maybe I will read the chapter, which for me was the transformative point for me to begin the mission that I began. So I'll read a passage from chapter 3 of my book, I Am What I Am. It's called as The Girl Who Did Not Cry. Any sexual assault is a traumatic event and leaves deep scars on the psyche of the survivor. The shame, the guilt, the feelings of being tainted, the self-loathing that it brings in its wake is universal. I was no exception. I was 15 when I was sexually assaulted. It was in a village. I had gone for a new literacy campaign. I'd been visiting this village for a year, interacting with girls and motivating them to go to school. My persistence had borne results, and a handful of the girls I worked with managed to convince their parents to resume their schooling. I'd given them remedial classes to catch up with the syllabus. We had become friends over time and discussed a variety of subjects, including menstrual hygiene and other intimate issues. Some of my ideas were rather revolutionary, I suppose. For instance, when I told them that I didn't believe in physically isolating women during periods, they'd look at me with awe. On these visits, I would stay on the weekends to reduce the commute, then return home the following evening in time for my school on Monday. My room was some distance from the classroom, and I usually cut across some fields to get there. It was usually late in the evening by the time class was over. I was used to the terrain, and the lack of light did not bother me. A torch was good enough to show me the way. Perhaps my experience camping as a Girl Guide had helped. That night, I was walking back to my room after class. It was dark, no street lights around. I had the torch around. The beam caught a group of men coming towards me. I hadn't even heard them. I focused the torch on them. There were about 8 men approaching, yet they didn't greet me or break their stride. But this wouldn't have happened, made me pause in the city, in the village. This was rather odd. I hesitated for a second, then made to move past. Out of nowhere came a fist to my face. The blow knocked me to the ground. My screams were crushed under somebody's palm. And then nothing. I have no recollections, vague or detailed. No faces or other identifying features. Just random impressions, body odor. Hours later, when I gained consciousness, my clothes, the age, the bruises on my body told me what I had experienced. When I managed to gather myself, I was filled with anger, righteous anger. I wanted to fight. The villagers, when I went to, mostly women, pointed out quietly, what has happened. What good would come out of making a scene? They thought it was best to hush up the incident and urge me to return to the city, but I disagreed. I thought, why should I be ashamed? It is the creatures who violated me who should hesitate to show their faces. I met the panchayat, mostly men. Their response was even more humiliating. I got what I deserved. They told me it was all my fault. I had been swaying the girls and giving them bad ideas. I'm not sure what triggered their anger or animosity towards me, but I guess it had been building for some time. Mine was a good lesson to learn from, a warning for those who were a bad influence, they said. They were treating me as if I was the criminal. I was enraged. I have no idea how I got home. I was on an autopilot by then. My family took the news in complete silence. My parents did not question me, but I could sense their shock and pain. There was no way they would report the incident to the police. I was not interested in being berated and humiliated once again. Over the next few days, my father held a gentle silence that gave me space, helped me to get back to my routine. The rest of the family followed his lead. In the end, I couldn't take any further action against my attackers. The villagers' reaction, my blackout, and to an extent, my family's response had seen to that. What could I say really when I couldn't even remember a single face? In the days that followed, the anger, hurt, humiliation built up. Fueled by the injustice of all, I felt no sense crushed. I had a clear conscience. I had deep-seated certainty that I was not at fault in any way. But I realized that emotion passions would not get me justice. What they did instead was spark a desire to do something, a spark that turned into a compelling inferno of need to reach out to other girls who had gone through similar experience. There was no moment or day that this realization dawned. It was gradual, built up over time, the certainty that I would pledge every breath of my life to fight sex crime against women and girls. The more I thought about it, the more I started understanding the impact of sex crimes on women. And then it struck me that women and girls caught up in prostitution experience this on a daily basis, hourly basis. I started to consider prostitution as the worst form of sex crime. It's not a one-time violation, but one that continues often for years until the woman or girl can liberate herself. I began mulling over what these people go through. If a one-time violation can cause so much pain, what happens when it becomes an everyday affair? My own experience opened my eyes to the haunting aftermath for the sufferers of sex crimes. I could somewhat relate to the social exclusion they were subjected to. If my experience triggered those reactions, imagine the hostility, the stigma, the ostracization that those caught up in prostitution faced. I'd like to stop here. This is the beginning of my journey. Sorry, it got a little emotional when I read because my father is no more. He died 3 years back today in November 2021. So, and reading his name today hit me hard on what he gave me and the kind of space he gave me to deal with my trauma. I am what I am is a memoir. It captures my journey as not just as a survivor but as an activist who chose to change the life of women and children who are caught up in sex slavery. Today setting up one of the largest organizations in the country called as Prajwala, setting up one of the largest rehabilitation homes in the world, and also advocating for the most amount of policies and laws related to sex trafficking and sex crime. Is my time done? Do we have time for questions or anything? Yeah, I'd like to stop here. Reading is such a monotonous activity. I'd rather speak. Are there any questions that you want to ask? Please do. Yes. Can you use the mic, please? I have a bad ear. Just be loud.
Yeah. So you're doing amazing work, and I cannot imagine how much grief you have to process secondhand because you work with sex workers and having to listen to that. How do you handle that, and how do you keep that separate from what you have to do? Because it can be very draining.
So first thing I will do is to correct your semantic. I don't work with sex workers, and the whole chapter in this book on why the word sex work is different from what I work on. I work on sex trafficking. I work on victims of commercial sexual exploitation. And as a positioning, I'm an abolitionist. I'm opposed to sexual services being sold on a commercial level. So the word sex work is not something that I even endorse. Victims of commercial sexual exploitation or survivors. So yeah, vicarious trauma is our day-to-day existence. We rescue close to 45 to 50 victims a month, and which means that we're constantly under threat. So we are not only exposed to trauma, but we are also subjected to trauma because threat and intimidation is a way of life for us. Sujata is from the same college that I studied, and they were talking about reunions and things like that. I don't attend any of those, largely because it's a security threat. So there is trauma that comes from what you're exposed to, but there's also a trauma that you're being subjected to because there is a threat to your life every time. There have been 17 attacks on my life. So how do I deal with it? One, I'm a trained professional. So you're trained to attach and detach, to attach with the problem and detach from the person. But then, you know, always in my pocket or my bag, there will be something like this. This is a Thrash Mills and Boons romance. I'm addicted to this. I read this everywhere, anywhere. I'm 52, but I'm still addicted to this. But the smiles of the people that you have worked with is a very healing impact. And I'm blessed to see that every minute. So as much as the pain, I also see the power. So, and that happens on the same day. So it's not that I'm only seeing pain. I see, you know, young children. The youngest child that I've rescued is around 3 years old. So, you know, when that little one smiles at you, hugs you, you think it's the biggest miracle of the world, because if this human being who's been subjected to so much of violence can forgive and, you know, rise above and have the generosity of the spirit to trust another human being, I think, you know, it's something, if you want to see God experience, that is God experience. So I see it every minute of my life. So as much as I see the pain, I see the power and the beauty of goodness too. Yeah. Does it answer your question? You had a question on it.
First of all, thank you for sharing that. It takes a lot to sit there and talk about it. You know, unfortunately, my sister's she's my little baby. She's also had an experience like that. And it's been recent years that she's spoke about it to us. And now finally she's just made her first post on social media speaking about this. And she's doing that. I'm so proud of her. And I feel people like you are such role models who give a different perspective to it. And I think one of the most beautiful things we can do as human beings is meaning making. And the meaning you've made out of it is very inspiring. I'm definitely going to suggest my sister to, you know, reach out to you, or follow you, or just follow your work. So thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else? I'll give you a
Please use the mic. Sorry for my deaf ear.
Good evening, ma'am. This is the second time I'm hearing you today, and I'm just enamored by your resilience, your grit. And ma'am, my question is very stupid, but nobody's been able to answer this. When a person is caught after committing a sexual crime, why aren't there laws that actually, you know, make the gravest punishment? Why isn't it being meted out?
So Your question is not stupid. It's a very valid question and it's a very sensible question. As a democracy, are you okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Slightly embarrassed, but okay.
No, not at all. So as a democracy and as a free nation, we have a constitution that does not encourage vigilante justice. So anybody who is accused or alleged to have such a crime has to go through the criminal justice system. And the criminal justice system has its own process. While a person does get even convicted, maybe at the lower court, in the session court, for maybe life imprisonment or capital punishment, especially if it's a victim who is below the age of 10, usually capital punishment is awarded. But then our justice system provides the space for appealing in higher courts. So you go to the High Court. You don't get there, you go up to the Supreme Court. That means you'll be a state guest for the next 20 years, aram se. You'll be sitting in our Tihar jail or some other jail, and if your behavior is good, you may get a parole also, although you're convicted in the lower court. So the criminal justice system, we have the most stringent punishment available in our country, especially for children. We have life imprisonment for adults, both in BNS and in POCSO. We have very, very good punishment. So the law is not the problem. The problem is A, in the implementation, and B, in the entire deficiencies in the system. Because the system, first of all, the system is not equipped fully. So you don't have all the courts with all the judges. There are not enough judges. There's so much of pendency of cases. And even if fast-track courts are kept, accused has space to go till the highest court for. So it doesn't happen like this. So between the session court and high court, say 3 years, 4 years. From high court to Supreme Court, another 6 years. So happily you're living for 10 years like that. So that's no problem. But in spite of that, just sending them to the jail sometimes is a deterrence. You know, the big problem is out of the 10 cases that happen, hardly 2 gets reported. You know, 8 are suppressed. You know, that is where the problem lies. The 2 that is getting reported is what will bring that little bit of deterrence. But the 8 that is not reported and hidden and silent are allowing that many number of perpetrators to do whatever they want with impunity.
Thank you. We'll take one last question from your friend.
Always an inspiration watching you, hearing you, Sunitha. So my question is about forgiveness, right? When we go through something like this, it must be very painful to relive an experience like somebody was, like you were asking her, right? You're going to go through it the second time. And then we're talking about helping them get over that situation. Probably forgiveness plays a role out there. How difficult has it been for you to guide those people who have gone through the pain and to guide them to come over, get over the experience? And what is the role that forgiveness plays? Because we're talking about it in different ways, but you know, how does it happen as part of this journey?
End of the day, the lesser the bitterness consumes you, the better it is for closure. You allow the bitterness, the anger to consume you, the more bitter you become. That's a burden that you carry. So definitely forgiveness has a role, but forgiveness and justice has to be looked at separate corners. Because justice is my requirement too, meaning every person who has been wronged has to feel right. Not right just in her eyes or that person's eyes, but also in the eyes of the world, that you have been, you got a wrong deal and the wrong deal has been corrected. But having said that, if you have to move on, you have to let go. One thing that has driven me for the last 37 years is my anger. It's my anger that is the building block of Prajwala. It is my anger that has saved 30,000 lives. The difference between somebody else's anger and my anger is I did not allow my anger to consume me and make me bitter and become, angry at everything around me. I allowed it to be harnessed and nurtured. Okay? That is not equivalent to forgiveness. But it is about how you channelize that emotion. I don't remember those 8 faces, And if you ask me, if they come right in front of me, I don't know what I'm going to do about it. But then somewhere you need to let go. And you move on. To that extent, forgiveness works, but it's not an easy thing to do. Only the person who's going through it knows the pain of being violated. Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah.
Thank you.
So much.